Every amusement and theme park has a costume or wardrobe department. So what's it like to work with them? How do costumes and your uniforms work? How many do you get? What's it like to wear them? This is everything uniform and costume related. So every park has a costume or wardrobe department. You've got a uniform that you've got to wear for your job when you're working at a theme park or an amusement park. And it's going to vary. With all of them, when you get your job, you are going to get some sort of sheet or checkout system that you are going to take to that costume department, that you are going to show them what you're doing, how much you're working, whether you're part-time, full-time, and things like that. And they are going to issue you your costumes and uniforms based on that. And every park has a little bit different formula. Everybody has a little bit different way that they work with it. Now keep in mind, if you're at an amusement park, they'll call it a uniform. If you're at a theme park, it's a costume. What's the difference? The words they use. That's about it. At Busch Gardens, when I went into the costuming department, I handed them the sheet. They handed me the clothes. At Disney, I had a little bit of measurement, but again, it was mostly that. Silver Dollar City, though, they actually took the time to measure me and make sure that I was getting clothes that fit, because they actually do custom make some of the things at Silver Dollar City. It's a little different for each. And then when it's time for you to finish your job, whether it's seasonal or permanent, you again bring in all your costumes, you bring in that sheet that showed everything you have, and they'll have a copy as well in case you lost it. And they will actually go through and they check off everything on that sheet. Yep, brought that back. Yep, brought that back. Good, he brought that back. Oh, where is this? Why don't you have this with you? Okay. If you don't bring something back, they will actually charge you based on what you're not returning and how much it costs. And usually it's not cheap because they want to make sure you bring the costumes back. One, so you don't resell it to someplace else or pretend you're a representative of the company anymore. But two, they will also want to make sure that they keep them in stock so they can keep reusing them until they wear out. In all cases, I took my costumes home with me. I didn't turn them into the park at the end of the day. I always took them home. I washed them on my own. I dried them. I cleaned them. I pressed them. I didn't always iron them. But taking care of my costumes was my job. There was a time in the past, at Disney in particular, where you turned in your costume at the end of the day. That really doesn't take place anymore unless you are portraying a character or have a specialized role. Otherwise, generally, you take your costumes home and you take care of them yourself. That's true at Busch Gardens, it was true at Disney, it was true at Silver Dollar City. Now, if there was a problem with a piece of costume, say I had gotten stains on it, or it tore, or there was something like that, well, then I could take it up to costuming and exchange it for another one. That was always available at all of them. If I really wanted at Disney to turn mine in at the end of the day and pick up a new costume, I could. It just took a long time. At the end of the day, you want to go home, not play with costuming. So taking care of the costumes was generally up to us, up to a point, and then once they got to a place where they weren't presentable, then we were supposed to exchange them. Most of the parks also had a system where if you got to the park and you had something that you had forgotten, or there was a problem with the costume you arrived at, or they were going to send you someplace else, you could check out another costume for the day. This happened a couple times at Silver Dollar City. We were scheduled to conduct and they needed a robber, or we arrived in our robber gear and found out we were supposed to conduct. Yay! Let's run up to costuming and go get our stuff so that way we can actually look like the right role. I had a couple times at Disney where I was scheduled to do a certain type of indoor shift where I didn't need my vest, and so I had left my vest at home and arrived at work, and oh, lo and behold, need the vest because I'm getting moved someplace else. Okay, let me go check one out for the day, and you go borrow one, and then at the end of the day, you turn it back in. So with Disney in particular, they actually have a computerized system where inside the costumes, they actually have scan bars. And this is how they keep track of the different costume pieces, how old they are, who it's checked out to, things like that. Silver Dollar City wasn't computerized, it was still paper. Busch Gardens was paper at the time, but that was a long time ago. So it's very possible they're computerized now. But you would go in, scan your ID card, which has a scan bar on it, scan the costume piece, and the computer registers it's yours. It also keeps track of how old the costume pieces are, because once they have been used for so long, the system will automatically time them out, say, hey, it's been 2 years, this piece has got to be worn out by now, and it will actually deregister it from the system at Disney. That plays a role later. Different parks provided different costume pieces and different numbers depending upon what you were doing. At Busch Gardens, I was issued 2 shirts and 2 pairs of pants for my job at Rhino Rally because I was only part-time. I did end up along the way with a 3rd shirt. I'm not quite sure how I ended up with it. It could have been one I picked up because I needed it, because I had ruined a shirt or something. I don't remember, but I ended up with this extra shirt that for some reason wasn't registered in the system. So when I went to turn in my costumes and hand them the pants and the shirts, I had this extra shirt and they said, we don't show it, we don't register it. Well, take it if you want. I'm like, souvenir! They did not provide shoes. In fact, all 3 of my jobs, I had to pay for my own shoes. And generally at Busch Gardens, it was a black work shoe. At Disney, it was a white tennis shoe that couldn't have any labels or brand names on it. Skechers were great for that. And then at Silver Dollar City, I had to have good work shoes. Heavy boots because of the stuff that we were doing. So I always had to provide my own shoes, always had to provide my own socks. Busch Gardens, it was the shirt and the pants, and that was pretty much all they gave us there. We did have rain gear that was available. If it rained, we kept that in our lockers in our break room. But that was pretty much all the costume they gave us, and it was polyester, which stank in the Florida heat. Didn't really like the costumes. It looked good, but it was uncomfortable, it was itchy, it was scratchy, and it was hot. Did not breathe. At Disney, they issued us several different things. I was full-time there, so I actually had 2 pairs of shorts. Somewhere along the way, I picked up a 3rd. And then I had another pair of pants, too. If you were working indoors, in particular with some of the dining, you were supposed to wear pants. So I kept 1 pair of pants in case it got cold or I was indoors, but otherwise it was shorts. And it's a polyester blend. We got a white shirt, and you can tell this one's well worn, which had some venting. But the white shirt, this is a cotton polyester blend. It's okay. And then we had our vest. And the vests are a weird nylon. They were great for storage. They could be hot outside, but it also made it much easier to do your job. That was our costume. Disney also issued us belts. They were the only place that actually gave us a belt. They also issued our rain gear and a pouch to attach to our belt to put it in. And there were 2 types of rain gear, basically. You had one set that came with the clear plastic pants and then a jacket that kind of went to about here. None of us liked that set. The other one was actually a long coat. Again, the clear plastic. Both had hoods. What we would do with the rain gear is we would keep an eye out and see when they would get the long jackets in, especially if we had the pants set. And, oh, look, my pants ripped. I got to change in for new rain gear. And we get the long set. And we would keep the hoods, because the hoods would separate, detach, and they were great for covering the camera. So rain gear was great. We also got a water bottle and a bottle holder that were standard issue. The one other thing that they would issue at Disney was the fleece jacket. And this was probably the best part of the uniform. Lots of pockets, comfortable, warm when it did get cold. So yeah, the fleece jackets were nice. So you're probably sitting there wondering, how on earth did you end up with all your Disney pieces? Because Disney computerizes everything and keeps track of all of it. Well, I moved up to Missouri. I kept my status actually as a cast member. And the intention was to go down to Florida every few months and work for a couple weeks. Well, that didn't work out, and I still had my costume pieces with me. And then when I finally got the letter that said, you know what, you haven't worked, you're being released, okay, but my costume pieces were so old because I'd been there for 5 years that they actually had timed them all out in the system. They showed as no costume. And so I actually called them and said, okay, look, I've got these costume pieces here. I know that I'm supposed to get charged. I've already had my last paycheck. What do you want me to do? And they said, we don't even show it in the system anymore. do whatever, throw them away. I'm not throwing these away. So I actually still have my costumes there. And that's how I ended up with them. Now, Silver Dollar City, we had 2 different jobs, robber and conductor. Now, with conductor, what you're seeing is basically what we would wear. They would give us 1 or 2 vests, typically 3 shirts. We also got the pair of pants that went with it. We got the tie. We got the hat. And this is actually none of Silver Dollar City's stuff that I am wearing right now. I'll tell you about that in a second. For robbing, we would get a couple of pairs of what we called bibs. They're overalls. And we would robberify them. We would wear them out. We'd bleach them. We'd wash them. We'd throw them in the dirt. We'd trash them as well as I could. And you wouldn't believe how hard it is to trash these things. This is a pair that I was actually given that's got a nice rip in it. But we would get these couple pairs of bibs. We would go into this bin that had old discarded work shirts, and we would go through those and try to find a couple that fit us, that look ratty. We'd cut off the sleeves, we'd scuff them up, and we would actually walk out of there because they were discarded shirts with 4 or 5 shirts. 2 pairs of bibs, 4 or 5 shirts, and we would have a variety of short sleeve, no sleeve for hot days, a little bit medium sleeve. I actually had 1 or 2 long sleeve shirts that I kept for when it did get cold, because we would rob in the rain and snow. We got a denim coat as well, which was warm. I would wear it when robbing sometimes, but if I was conducting, I liked wearing my duster. You couldn't just wear that. You actually had to go up to costuming, have them look it over, make sure it fit the theme of the park, that it looked good, and they would actually have to give you an approval to wear it, which was no problem with my duster because it looked very 1880-ish. But again, we had to have our own shoes. And Silver Dollar City on the train, we had to have a heavy-duty work shoe because with all the stuff off the engines and the cars, it was hard. You could not do tennis shoes. They wouldn't last. They didn't look authentic either. So I actually had a couple pairs of boots that I wore. Just the short boot, work boot. And that's what I wore on a regular basis. And I made sure I got comfortable ones. Skechers again. Working at the parks really got me hooked on Skechers. And an endorsement sponsorship there would be really cool. But yeah. Skechers was far and away the best shoe for me as far as working goes. Because they were comfortable. And that was basically the costumes. The robber costumes, we didn't have to turn back in. I did give them 1 of my pairs of bibs because they did have it on the inventory. And I don't like bibs. I don't think they're real comfortable unless I'm wearing a costume. As far as the conductor stuff, I had to turn all of that in. So what you're actually seeing here is things that I bought online. The necktie, the vest. I actually had one of my sponsors, my patrons, actually help buy a lot of it for me because these hats are not cheap. It's a very unique hat for Silver Dollar City, and this ran about $80. And I was very grateful that I was able to pick it up just before the funeral of one of my coworkers on the train. But yeah, I basically pieced together an approximation, and it's very close to what they wear, but it's not quite the same. There are some differences. But I do still actually even have my old watch from when I worked. Silver Dollar City costumes are probably the most comfortable because they are a cotton blend shirt, and even when it was hot, it wasn't too bad. And the robber outfits, we would definitely customize those to be cooler. The other thing that we would wear at Silver Dollar City is we would actually buy our own garters, black arm garters, to be able to hold up our sleeves so we could roll them up. And on hot days, we could wear suspenders. And so we would actually have the costume shop attach buttons to 1 or 2 of our pairs of pants. And we could get black suspenders that would button on, and we could wear that and ditch the vest on really hot days. It had to be over 90 degrees for us to do that, but it was very nice, and it still kept us looking very much like the conductor. When you were leaving the company, you were supposed to package up all your costumes, put them in a bag or something like that, and you would go to costuming with your sign-out sheet. And every company does this a little bit different. Silver Dollar City, we actually had a sheet that we would get at the end of the year, and we would fill it out, check off that we had turned in everything, done our paperwork for the end of the year, stopped by attractions office and checked out with them. And part of that whole process was going to costuming and giving them all of our costumes and signing off that we had turned everything in. If we were going to come back the next season at Silver Dollar City, they would actually take our stuff and put it into a bag and mark our name on it and set it aside and store it for us over the off season. And then when we came in the next year, 3 months later, we could actually walk in with our rehire letter and say, hey, I'm back. And all they would have to do is walk over, grab our bag, and hand it to us, and we're done. It was wonderfully easy that way. The others, because they were year-round parks, we didn't have that issue. But it did make it very nice as far as picking it up the next year. So that's a little look at theme park costumes and how I got mine in every case and how I ended up with a couple leftovers and put together another outfit. Do you have more questions about what the costumes were like? Busch Gardens were the worst ones. Disney's were okay. Silver Dollar Saves were actually pretty good. But I'd love to hear your questions, or what were your costumes like? Let me know. Please share it in the comments below. Please don't forget to hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe as well if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my financial supporters, my patrons and YouTube members who make so much possible, including this outfit right here. If you want to know more about supporting me and the perks that come with it, please check the description below. Thank you so incredibly much for watching. God bless. When I worked at Busch Gardens, I went in, handed in the sheet, and because I was part-time, they actually issued me the... And they will actually charge you... They would give us one vest. They're right. And this is actually none of Silver Dollar stuff. And this is actually none of Silver... But if I was conducting, I like wearing my